I sat on the worn-out couch, a couch that once held stories of laughter and late-night movies. Now it was just an old piece of furniture in a room filled with memories of a happier past. Sophie, my 3-year-old angel, was upstairs, her gentle breaths a stark contrast to the heavy air of our home. I glanced at the clock again. It was past 10 p.m. Mark was late as had become his norm. The sound of the key turning in the lock finally broke the silence. I stood up, smoothing my shirt, not sure why I still bothered to look presentable for him. "Mark," I called out as he stepped in, looking more like a stranger than the man I married. "You're late." He didn't meet my eyes, just grunted a response. "Work. It's always work." His voice, once filled with warmth and affection, now carried a cold, distant tone. I tried to sound casual. "Sophie asked about you today. She wanted to know when Daddy would be home." He shrugged off his coat, hanging it carelessly on the rack. "Kids ask a lot of things. Doesn't mean we always have answers." I felt a twinge of pain in my heart. Maybe we could do something this weekend, just the three of us. Sophie would love that. Mark snorted, his tone laced with sarcasm. "A family outing with everything that's going on? Don't be naive, Lily." My hands trembled slightly. This wasn't the man I fell in love with. "It's important, Mark. She needs her father." He walked to the fridge, pulling out a beer. "What she needs is a miracle, not me playing pretend in a park." I couldn't hold back my tears. "She's your daughter, Mark. How can you be so cold?" He took a swig of his beer, avoiding my gaze. "I'm being realistic, Lily. This isn't the life I wanted." A surge of anger rose within me. "And what about me? Do you think I enjoy watching our daughter suffer? Do you think this is the life I dreamed of?" Mark slammed the beer bottle on the counter. "I don't know, Lily. I really don't. But I know I can't do this anymore." Anger and sadness mingled within me. "You want to walk away from your own child?" He drained his beer in one long gulp. "I need space. I can't deal with this suffocation." "Suffocation?" I echoed, disbelief in my voice. "Is that what your family is to you now?" Mark turned away, his shoulders tense. "It's not just that. It's everything. The constant hospital visits, the medical bills, the way our lives revolve around Sophie's illness. I didn't sign up for this." I was at a loss for words. How had our love turned into this bitter reality? "So what's your plan, Mark? Leave us? Start over somewhere else?" He didn't answer, just walked past me, his footsteps heavy against the wooden floor. I stood there, a mix of emotions turning inside me, anger, sadness, and a profound sense of betrayal. Later, as I lay in bed, the space next to me cold and empty, I listened to the distant sound of Mark's TV from the other room. The divide between us had grown too vast to bridge. The man I married, the father of my child, was now a stranger living under the same roof. The hospital room was stark and clinical, a sharp contrast to the warm and familiar feel of our home. Sophie lay in the small hospital bed, her tiny chest rising and falling steadily. I sat beside her, holding her small hand, trying to draw strength from her innocent slumber. Nurse Janet walked in, her face a mask of professional kindness. "How's our brave girl doing today, Lily?" I managed a weary smile. "She's a fighter, always has been." Janet checked Sophie's vitals, her movements efficient and gentle. "She's in good hands here. The surgery team is one of the best." I nodded, my throat tight with unspoken fears. "I know. I just wish Mark could be here more. She keeps asking for him." Janet gave me a sympathetic look. "Fathers often find it hard to cope with these situations, but you're doing an amazing job." I sighed, feeling the weight of loneliness. "It's hard doing it alone, you know. He's just not the same anymore." As if on cue, Mark walked in, his arrival less comforting than I had hoped. He glanced at Sophie and then at me, his expression unreadable. "How is she?" "The same," I replied, trying to keep my voice steady. He fiddled with his phone, avoiding eye contact. I can't stay long. Work's crazy. I felt a flash of anger. Work, right? Because that's what's important right now. Mark looked up, his eyes cold. What do you want from me, Lily? To sit here and watch her sleep? I bit back a sharp retort, focusing on Sophie instead. She asked for you today, Mark. She misses her dad. He shrugged, his detachment like a physical barrier. I'm here, aren't I? Before I could respond, Sophie stirred, her little voice weak but clear. Daddy. Mark's face softened momentarily as he moved closer to her. Hey, princess, Daddy's here. Sophie smiled faintly, reaching out for him. Stay with me, Daddy. I watched, a mix of hope and sorrow in my heart, as Mark hesitated, then sat on the edge of the bed. I can't stay long, Sophie. Dad has to work. Her smile faded, a look of understanding far beyond her years in her eyes. It's okay, Daddy. I love you. Mark forced a smile, patting her hand. I love you too, kiddo. As he stood to leave, I felt a surge of resentment. She needs you, Mark. We need you. He paused, his back to us. I'm doing what I can, Lily. But his words rang hollow in the sterile room. I watched him leave, a familiar sense of abandonment settling over me. Sophie's hand gripped mine, her small presence a reminder of the fight ahead of us. The room fell silent again, save for the beeping of the monitors. I leaned closer to Sophie, whispering promises of better days, promises I wasn't sure I could keep. But in that moment, all I had was hope and the unwavering love for my daughter. The silence in the room was broken by a call from my friend Lisa, who worked as a realtor for a local company. I sat in the dimly lit hospital cafeteria, clutching a lukewarm cup of coffee. My mind was a whirlwind of betrayal and shock after Lisa's call. Mark was selling our house, our home. Anger and disbelief swirled within me, fueling a determination I hadn't felt in months. Lisa slid into the seat across from me, her expression a mix of concern and anger. I can't believe he's doing this, Lily, selling your house while you're here with Sophie. I took a deep breath, trying to steady my shaking hands. I need you to delay the sale, Lisa. Buy me some time. Lisa nodded, her eyes hard. I'll do what I can, but we don't have much time. He's pushing for a quick sale. I leaned forward, my voice low and firm. I won't let him get away with this. He thinks he can just steal my house and run off with whoever she is. Lisa reached out her hand, gripping mine. Do you have a plan? A plan. The word echoed in my mind. I had been reactive for too long, letting life and Mark's indifference dictate my days, but not anymore. I'm going to fight back. I'll start by talking to a lawyer. There has to be a way to stop this. Lisa's expression shifted to one of support. Good. You fight this, Lily, and I'm here every step of the way. I nodded, feeling a spark of resolve. And I'll need to gather evidence, proof of his betrayal, the fraud, anything that can help my case. Let's start with the house sale. Lisa suggested, I'll dig up everything I can on the buyer, the deal, anything out of the ordinary. I sipped my coffee, its bitterness mirroring my mood. I can't believe he's doing this to me, to Sophie, after everything we've been through. Lisa's hand tightened around mine. He's a coward, Lily, and he's going to regret underestimating you. I stood up, my resolve strengthening. He's going to pay for this, Lisa. He's going to pay for hurting my daughter, for trying to take away our home. I'll make sure of it. Lisa stood with me, her eyes fierce. Let's do this, Lily. Let's show him he picked the wrong woman to mess with. Hidden from view, I stood just outside the realtor's office, my heart racing. Through the slightly ajar door, I could hear the voices inside. Mark was there, his tone smooth and confident as he spoke to the potential buyers. And she was there too, his mistress, her laughter tinkling like a bell, completely oblivious to the storm she was a part of. I watched as Mark handed over a stack of papers to the buyers, his charm on full display. the same charm that had once swept me off my feet. "This is a fantastic opportunity," he was saying. "A beautiful house, great location. You're getting a steal." The buyers, a middle-aged couple, nodded, their expressions a mix of eagerness and caution. The wife leafed through the documents, her husband leaning over to look. "It all seems in order," she murmured. Mark's mistress, a young woman with bright red lipstick, laughed and leaned closer to Mark. "Told you it would be easy," she whispered, loud enough for me to hear. I felt a surge of anger, but I forced myself to stay put, to observe. This was about gathering evidence, understanding the depth of Mark's deceit. The husband looked up, a question in his eyes. "And the current owner? She's agreed to all this?" Mark's response was swift, a lie so smooth it sounded like truth. "Absolutely. She's moved on, wants to sell the place quickly." I clenched my fists, my nails digging into my palms. How could he lie so blatantly? The audacity of it made my blood boil. Lisa, who was playing her part in my game, intervened. "We can proceed with the sale as soon as you're ready." The couple exchanged a look, then nodded. "We're ready. This is a deal we don't want to miss." I watched as they began to sign the papers, the finality of each stroke like a dagger in my heart. But I needed to stay focused. This was not the time for emotions. It was the time for action. Mark's laughter brought me back to the moment. He was toasting with the buyers, his mistress clinging to his arm. "To new beginnings," he said, raising his glass. I stepped into the room, my gaze fixed on Mark. "Enjoying yourself, Mark?" Everyone turned, shock and confusion on their faces. Mark's smile faltered. "Lily, what are you doing here?" I walked up to them, my steps firm. "I'm here to stop you from making the biggest mistake of your life, Mark." Mark's mistress scoffed, rolling her eyes. "What are you talking about? The deal is done." I smiled, but it was cold, devoid of any warmth. "Is it now? Because I don't remember signing off on selling my house." The buyers looked uncomfortable, exchanging glances. "We were told everything was in order," the husband said, his voice uncertain. Mark stepped forward, trying to assert control. "Lily, you're confused. This is for the best." I shook my head. "No, Mark. The only confusion here is yours if you think you can forge my signature and get away with it." The room went silent. Mark's face turned a shade paler. "You can't prove anything," he blurted out. I pulled out a set of documents from my bag. "Actually, I can, and I have. These are the real papers. The ones you have are forgeries." Mark's mistress tugged at his arm. "Mark, what's she talking about? Tell me this isn't true." But Mark was speechless, his usual confidence shattered. That's when the door opened and two police officers walked in. One of the officers looked directly at Mark. "Mark Johnson, you're under arrest for fraud and forgery." Mark's face drained of color. He looked at me, his eyes filled with disbelief. "You called the cops?" He met his gaze, my voice steady. "Yes, I did. You broke the law, Mark, and you tried to steal my home." As the officers handcuffed Mark, his mistress started to cry, her makeup smearing. The buyers quickly gathered their things, eager to distance themselves from the situation. One of the officers turned to me. "We'll need your statement, ma'am." I nodded, feeling a sense of justice. "Of course, officer." As they led Mark away, he looked back at me, his expression a mix of anger and regret, but I felt no sympathy. He had made his choice, and now he was facing the consequences. Lisa smiled at me, nodding her head approvingly. I smiled back and left the office, a weight lifted off my shoulders. I had stood up for myself and Sophie. I had fought back, and this was just the beginning. After Mark's arrest, I found myself in the lawyer's office. The walls were lined with law books, and the air was heavy with the scent of leather. My lawyer, Mr. Thompson, was a no-nonsense man in his 50s, his face etched with lines of experience. He glanced at the file in front of him. "Lily, Your husband's actions have opened up a big can of worms. The fraud charge is serious. I sat across from him, my hands clasped tightly in my lap. I know, Mr. Thompson, but I couldn't let him get away with it. Not after everything. Mr. Thompson nodded, understanding in his eyes. I respect that. Now, about the divorce and custody battle, you're in a strong position, but it won't be easy. I leaned forward. I'm ready for it. I have to do this for Sophie. She deserves a stable home. The lawyer shuffled some papers. What about alimony and child support? Given Mark's incarceration, it's going to be complicated. I sighed, a mix of determination and sadness in my voice. I want what's fair for Sophie. She's my priority. As for Mark, he made his choices. Mr. Thompson looked at me, his expression serious. You're a strong woman, Lily. We'll fight for what's right for you and your daughter. As I left the office, my phone rang. It was Mark. I had hesitated but answered. What do you want, Mark? His voice came through, laced with desperation. Lily, please. I messed up, I know that. But don't take Sophie away from me. I stopped in my tracks, anger rising. You thought about Sophie when you tried to sell our house? When you spent your days with that woman? He was silent for a moment. I lost my way, but I'm her father, Lily. I love her. I clenched my phone tighter. Love isn't just words, Mark. It's actions. You failed us both. Mark's voice cracked. I'll do anything to make it right. Please, Lily. I shook my head even though he couldn't see me. It's too late for that. You'll see Sophie, but only under supervised visits. That's non-negotiable. There was a pause, then a soft, defeated sigh from Mark. Okay, I understand. The days were a whirlwind. I spent most of my time with Sophie, ensuring she felt loved and secure amidst the chaos. Her laughter was a balm to my wounded heart. One afternoon, while Sophie napped, I received a call from my sister, Laura. Hey, Lily, how are you holding up? Laura's voice was always a mix of concern and strength. I sighed, staring out the window. It's tough, but I'm getting through it. Laura was silent for a moment. I heard about Mark. I'm so sorry, Lily, but I'm proud of you for standing up to him. I smiled faintly. Thanks, Laura. It's hard, but I have to be strong for Sophie. She needs me now more than ever. Laura's voice softened. And what about you? Who's being strong for Lily? Her question caught me off guard, hard. I had been so focused on Sophie and the legal battle that I hadn't given much thought to myself. I don't know, Laura. I guess I haven't had time to think about that. Laura was firm. You need to take care of yourself too, Lily. You can't pour from an empty cup. I knew she was right. I'll try, Laura. It's just everything feels overwhelming right now. You're not alone, Lily. Remember that. I'm here for you. Always. The next day, I visited a therapist, Dr. Martin. His office was a small, cozy room with soft lighting and a comfortable couch. He greeted me with a warm smile. Lily, it's good to meet you. How can I help you today? I took a deep breath, unloading my worries and fears. I just feel so lost, Dr. Martin. Everything I knew, everything I trusted, it's all been turned upside down. Dr. Martin nodded, his voice gentle. It's understandable to feel that way after what you've been through, but it's important to remember that this is a chapter in your life, not the whole story. His words resonated with me. Over the next few weeks, I started to take small steps towards reclaiming my life. I joined a support group for single parents. The first meeting was daunting, but as I listened to others share their stories, I realized I wasn't alone. Welcome, Lily, said the group leader, a kind woman named Beth. We're here to support each other, to share our struggles and our victories. I shared my story, my voice steady but filled with emotion. The group listened, their faces a tapestry of empathy and understanding. After the meeting, a woman named Sarah approached me. Your story is inspiring, Lily. You're stronger than you realize. Her words lifted my spirits. Maybe I was stronger than I thought. Maybe, just maybe, I could turn this painful chapter into a story of resilience and hope. Sitting in my living room, the early morning light filtering through the curtains, I reflected on the tumultuous journey that had led to this moment of tranquility. The divorce papers, now signed and finalized, lay on the coffee table, a testament to my newfound independence. The legal battle had been long and arduous. I had sued Mark for a substantial portion of his property, determined to secure a stable future for Sophie and myself. The court's decision had been in our favor. Mark, now serving a real sentence for his fraudulent activities, had lost much of what he had once held dear. His mistress, caught in the web of deceit, was slapped with a hefty fine payable to me as restitution. I remembered sitting in the courtroom, watching Mark and his mistress turn on each other, each trying to deflect blame. There was no love lost between them, only bitter accusations and desperate attempts to save themselves. Watching them, I felt a sense of satisfaction. They had gotten what they deserved. Their betrayal and greed had led them to this downfall. But amidst the chaos of legal proceedings and emotional upheavals, there was a silver lining. Sophie, my brave little girl, had made a swift recovery after her surgery. Her laughter and energy filled our home with a warmth that had been missing for far too long. As I sipped my morning coffee, I thought about our future. It was a future I had fought hard for, a future that seemed bright and promising. Sophie was my priority, my beacon of hope. Together, we had weathered a storm and emerged stronger. I glanced at the pictures on the mantel, images of Sophie and me at the park, at the zoo, smiling and carefree. They were more than just photographs. They were reminders of our resilience, our ability to find joy amidst adversity. Sophie bounded into the room, her hair a tousled mess, her eyes bright with excitement. "Mommy, are we going to the park today?" I smiled, my heart swelling with love. "Yes, sweetheart, we're going to have a great day." She clapped her hands, her laughter echoing through the room. "Yay, I love the park." As I watched her play, I realized that this was what mattered the most. The struggles, the pain, and the betrayal were behind us. What lay ahead was a path of healing and new adventures.
Today is an important day for me personally, as I am sitting in my family home, a place full of precious memories and walls which contain tale of olden the days. The cat is there too, energetic as ever. Heaven forbid he would sit and be bored whilst we find our feet, charging around the room like a lunatic with his incessant gusto and infectious glee that I cannot help but partake in. It was this house, the heart of my family's inheritance, in which one day a middle-class car dealer realized his dream and made it into an incredible $6 million estate. It is a testament to his years of work and a legacy he left behind for me upon dying. Now, in his absence, my husband is keen to claim a share of this inheritance, arguing that it should belong to both of us. However, I am armed with documents that clearly state my sole ownership. My name is Marilyn, 40 years old, and I am deeply immersed in the digital realm thanks to my career at an online bank, a path that echoes the financial principles my parents instilled in me. They taught me the value of money management and the importance of financial responsibility, lessons that guide me to this day. Despite growing up in affluence, my parents ensured I lived a grounded life. My upbringing was not marked by lavishness. My allowance was modest, our meals were simple, and my education was in a public school, contrary to what one might expect from someone of my financial standing. Yet rumors of our wealth painted a different picture, leading many to believe my life was a parade of luxury and leisure. Marilyn, with your grand house and wealth, life must be a breeze, right? You must have all the latest gadgets and games, "Can we come over and play?" were common queries from peers who envisioned a life for me that was far from reality. I didn't possess the latest toys or gaming consoles, yet the assumption was otherwise. It seemed like many wanted to befriend me for the perceived perks of my lifestyle. Today, as I stand in this house, surrounded by both the tangible and intangible pieces of my heritage, I am reminded of the true richness of my life, rooted not in material wealth, but in the values and memories that shape who I am. Coming from a family with financial means, I often found myself in uncomfortable situations where friends and acquaintances would ask me for money. It made me uneasy as I felt it contradicted the values of self-reliance and discretion that my parents had instilled in me. This discomfort escalated when I found myself in a dilemma after accidentally breaking Emma's gaming console. At the time, I had no money to replace it, which worsened the situation. Around the same period, Barbara, a new classmate, became a part of my life. She inquired whether I had informed my parents about the incident with the console, but fear of disappointing them kept me silent. "I can't tell them. They might get upset," I confessed to Barbara, hoping for her understanding. Regrettably, when she asked me for financial help, I had to decline due to my parents' strict rule against lending money. Apologizing to Barbara was hard, and it made our school interactions awkward. Things took a turn for the worse when Barbara tearfully reacted to my refusal, and soon enough, rumors started circulating that I was unwilling to help a friend despite my family's wealth. Attempts to clarify that I had no spare money were futile. Emma then made a hurtful comment, implying that I valued money over friendship. The situation deteriorated further when Emma and Barbara began spreading falsehoods that I owed them money and was refusing to compensate for the broken console. The school eventually intervened and learned the truth, reprimanding Emma and Barbara. However, the rumors continued to spiral, eventually reaching my parents. My father stepped in, arranging a meeting with both families. Despite their apologies, the damage to our relationship was irreparable, and I chose to distance myself from Emma and Barbara. Despite this resolution, I still had to endure their cold stares and whispered comments. The whole ordeal was a painful lesson in trust and the complexities of friendship when mixed with money. That evening at dinner, my dad offered some advice that has resonated with me over the years. He emphasized the importance of being firm in our decisions, especially when it comes to financial matters. "Marilyn, it's perfectly fine to say no," he advised, his tone warm and reassuring. He also suggested a practical approach for handling persistent inquiries about money. If someone keeps asking, just tell them you need to check with your parents, even if you already know you can't lend the money. This wisdom on managing money issues with grace and assertiveness became a cornerstone of my growth. As I matured, I became more selective about the people I allowed into my inner circle, prioritizing character over financial considerations. Post-university, I was keen to keep my professional and personal lives distinct to avoid financial entanglements. These experiences underscored the value of setting clear boundaries in friendships and finances alike, shaping the person I became. By the time I was 32, I met Scott through a mutual friend. Despite our age difference, his authenticity and warmth were immediately appealing. What started as casual dating soon blossomed into a serious relationship. 3 years later, we celebrated our union with a beautiful wedding, much to my parents' delight. About a month into our marriage, my father suggested inviting Scott over to our place. I had some reservations. Scott was a talkative person, and I feared he might unwittingly divulge sensitive family information. Nevertheless, feeling more secure in our relationship, I decided it was time to introduce him more fully to my family's world. During the visit, Scott was visibly impressed by my family's home, revealing that he hadn't fully grasped the extent of our wealth. While the visit itself went smoothly, Scott's relentless questions about our financial status during our drive home made me uncomfortable, particularly because I wasn't very familiar with the specifics of our family finances myself. A few months later, the situation took a dramatic turn when my mother called to inform me that my father had been hospitalized, an event that came as a shock and added another layer of complexity to our lives. It was a shock to discover that my dad was unwell, especially since I hadn't been aware of any health issues. Reflecting on our last meeting, I remembered noticing that he seemed under the weather, and now guilt and worry overwhelmed me. When my mom and I visited him in the hospital that Saturday, despite his efforts to stay upbeat, it was clear he was struggling. He even apologized for what he felt was a burden on us, which was just so typical of his kind-hearted nature. The doctor's news that he had advanced pancreatic cancer, which had spread too far for surgery, hit us hard. It was hard to grasp how someone as health-conscious as my dad could fall so ill. Throughout his diagnosis, he remained strong, focusing on our happiness rather than his suffering, which brought tears to all of our eyes. Due to hospital regulations, only immediate family could visit, which saddened him as he hoped to create more happy memories with friends at home. This reminded us all of the vibrant life he had envisioned for us. I promised him that I would keep our home a place of joy, even in his absence. This promise became a cornerstone of how I coped with the situation. To honor my dad, I decided to renovate our family home, giving me something positive to focus on during such a difficult period. Scott, always so caring, expressed concern about the extent of my involvement, unaware of the additional challenges I was facing, like issues with our family estate that I had yet to disclose to him. When Scott inquired about my dad's condition, I finally opened up about all the difficulties we were facing. It was a relief to share the burden as I juggled work, hospital visits, and the flood of emotions that came with them. However, tension arose when Scott began to question the financial implications of my dad's illness and the status of the family estate. He even suggested we seek legal advice to prepare for any eventuality concerning my mom, which stirred up painful memories for me. My dad had always had a trusted lawyer, and the thought of diving into legalities at such a time felt incredibly raw and complicated. Scott's cautious approach to finances began to create tension in our relationship. This tension escalated a few months later when my father sadly passed away after a valiant fight against his illness. As we navigated the challenging period that followed, discussions about inheritance began to emerge within my family. I inherited a substantial property, a mansion valued at $6 million, which only heightened Scott's curiosity and involvement. Despite my efforts to keep him at a distance from these discussions, his excitement about moving into the mansion and his persistent questions about financial details took me by surprise. I later discovered that he had spoken to my cousin at the funeral, who had offhandedly mentioned that it would be a waste for such a grand house to remain unoccupied. This remark only complicated matters further. Despite my attempts to make it clear to Scott that the inheritance was mine and not something to be shared, he seemed unwilling or unable to accept this. Our relationship grew increasingly strained. At my father's funeral, Scott was present but disengaged. not assisting with the memorial services or the subsequent legal matters. As we tried to settle back into daily life, Scott shocked me by claiming he had changed the ownership of the family home into his name, presenting legal documents as proof. This betrayal was not only a profound breach of trust, but also a clear disregard for the respect and boundaries within our relationship. Dealing with these inheritance issues exposed deeper problems in our marriage, forcing us to reevaluate our values, the trust between us, and the direction of our relationship. When Scott bluntly suggested that we could continue living as roommates in the house without much financial support from him, and even threatened divorce if I disagreed, I was devastated. The magnitude of his actions and proposals was overwhelming. I pleaded with him to reconsider what he was doing, hoping he would see the emotional and relational turmoil his actions had caused. When Scott made the unilateral decision to change the ownership of our family home without my consent, he claimed he had consulted a lawyer. This revelation escalated our issues to the point where divorce seemed inevitable. I felt utterly betrayed and isolated, compelled to distance myself from the life and home I had shared with Scott. I couldn't fathom why Scott would take such drastic measures. It seemed that his perspective on money had shifted dramatically, impacting his actions and our relationship negatively. The situation worsened the next day when Scott demanded the house keys, claiming ownership. His attempt to enter the house was thwarted by security, whom I provided with the legitimate ownership documents that affirmed the house was indeed mine, a gift from my father. Upon seeing the proof, Scott was taken aback. He had entrusted a man named Frank to handle the legalities of changing the ownership and had paid him $10,000. Unfortunately, it turned out to be a scam. Frank was nowhere to be found, ignoring all of Scott's attempts to contact him. Scott's frustration soon turned towards me. He accused me of overspending and questioned my understanding of inheritance laws. Despite Scott's attempts to mend our relationship and his suggestions to give our marriage another shot, the trust we once shared was irreparably damaged. I had to ask the security guard to escort him off the property, marking the end of a painful chapter in my life. In the months that followed, I had ample time to reflect on everything that had transpired. This period of introspection helped me understand just how crucial trust and honesty are in a relationship. The ordeal with Scott, filled with deceit and betrayal, taught me to guard against letting financial matters cloud my judgment. During the first memorial service for my dad at our family temple, Scott made an unexpected appearance. Since our divorce, his life had taken a downward turn. He was unemployed and facing financial difficulties. This encounter was a stark reminder of how drastically our lives had diverged since the split. Seeing Scott at my dad's memorial service brought a mix of emotions. The people he had trusted had clearly failed him, and he stood there looking visibly distressed and out of place during such a solemn event. His attempt to apologize, though tearful, unintentionally caused a stir among my relatives. Despite his emotional state, I found it necessary to ask him to leave, and security had to intervene to ensure it was done. This was not only a difficult moment, but also a turning point for me, reinforcing my desire to move forward and leave our shared past behind. I decided it was time to move out of my parents' home, a decision I had been considering for some time. I found a new place to live, severing ties with Scott completely. Meanwhile, Scott continued to visit the property, which my mom and I had transformed into a rental villa. This new venture allowed us to turn a family property into a source of joy and retreat for many visitors. On his part, Scott appeared to be making positive strides. He secured a new job and seemed dedicated to starting anew. Transforming our family home into a rental villa not only fulfilled my dad's vision, but also created a warm and inviting space for guests from various backgrounds. Known for its stunning views and beautiful garden, the villa quickly gained popularity. We hosted a range of events, from intimate weddings to large family gatherings. Working alongside my mom on this project brought us closer and filled us with joy. As the villa's success grew, we decided to enhance it further. We added a swimming pool, a cozy outdoor lounge, and a playful area for children. Each new addition made the villa even more appealing, turning it into a beloved destination for relaxation and celebration. Symbolizing a new chapter of growth and happiness for us, our dedication to ensuring that our guests had a fantastic experience at the villa paid off, as it quickly became a favorite destination for those seeking a peaceful retreat and memorable experiences. This project was more than just a business venture. It was about fulfilling my father's dream and creating cherished memories for everyone who visited. Taking care of the villa's garden brought me immense joy and satisfaction. Transforming our family home into a vibrant place where people could gather, have fun, and create lasting memories filled me with pride. I could almost sense my father's pride looking down on us, seeing his vision come to life. This venture not only realized his dream, but also provided us with financial stability and a newfound sense of freedom. Throughout this journey, I learned valuable lessons about trust, finance, and the strength required to carve out my path independent of past challenges. This process of self-discovery taught me that facing difficulties can strengthen and motivate one. From friends, I heard updates about Scott, who seemed to be turning his life around by finding meaningful employment and learning from his past errors. Knowing that he was also making positive changes brought me a sense of calm, realizing that both of us were advancing and maturing in our ways. My father's vision became a catalyst for growth, not just for my mom and me, but for every guest who visited the villa. It turned into a hub of joy and celebration, a sanctuary where people could forge lasting memories. The success of the villa stands as a tribute to my father's vision, embodying the values of resilience and diligent work. Through this endeavor, we've created much more than just a place to stay. The villa has become a beacon of happiness, a place for crafting memories, and a testament to the idea that dreaming big and working hard can lead to remarkable outcomes.
My daughter returned home in tears after being invited to a Christmas gathering at her grandparents' place. She was visibly upset and handed me a wrapped gift in silence. "Mom, look at this. Why do I have to endure this?" she said. I was at a loss for words. Upon opening the package, I realized it was inappropriate for a child. Alarmed, I immediately reported the incident to the police, leading to the exposure and subsequent upheaval caused by the gift giver's actions. This incident stirred significant family drama, and the person responsible faced severe consequences. At 45, with a younger husband working in the same company, I embarked on a new career path at 34 after a derogatory comment from a previous employer. My current workplace prizes ability over age or gender, and my husband, then my supervisor, showed me great support. We quickly married and now have a 4th-grade daughter, a gentle soul who loves to read and shows kindness to all. My relationship with my husband's sister, however, is strained. Despite my good relations with my in-laws, she disapproves of me for being older than my husband and mocks our quick marriage. Her derogatory comments about my age and the physical changes from pregnancy were hurtful, yet I tried to remain unaffected for my peace of mind. Her attitude changed only when she had a quick wedding and moved away, reducing our interactions and sparing me from her taunts. This shift allowed me to focus on welcoming our daughter into the world despite the challenges of childbirth. The birth of our daughter, although difficult, marked a joyful milestone in our lives, free from the negativity that once clouded our happiness. Gaining strength from my husband's unwavering support and encouraging words was pivotal during the birth of our daughter. When she first cried in the delivery room, his gratitude and recognition of my effort moved us both to tears of joy. However, 5 months after our daughter's arrival, my sister-in-law gave birth to a boy and resumed her visits to our home, each trip taking an hour. Her purpose seemed to be to draw unfavorable comparisons between our children and to make disparaging remarks about my age, affecting my daughter negatively. According to her, it was visible in the supposed wrinkles on my daughter's face compared to the smooth skin of her child. Amidst adjusting to the demands of new parenthood, I found myself astounded by her audacity. She would arrive empty-handed, not bringing any baby essentials, and leave with diapers and formula, claiming she wanted to avoid running out. This behavior puzzled me greatly. It was as if her primary motive for visiting was to belittle me, and then take supplies as though it were her right. Eventually, her visits ceased, thanks to her husband's job requiring them to move to a different state. This brought a brief period of tranquility until our daughter began elementary school and discovered her cousin was also enrolled. Despite our strained family relationship, our daughter and her cousin developed a warm friendship. She, being older, kind and sincere, looked after him. He became quite popular among his peers. By the 3rd grade, they were in the same class, and my daughter received recognition for a summer project reading reflection, which was even published in the local newspaper. This achievement became a topic of conversation among family and relatives, especially during a visit to my in-laws. On this occasion, many relatives gathered, possibly because of my daughter's accolade. However, my sister-in-law seemed unsettled by our family receiving attention. She complained it was unfair, claiming the celebrated book was meant for her son. Despite the fact that the children had exchanged books by mutual agreement, after reading both options, they decided together on which book report to write, showing a collaborative spirit that my nephew appreciated. This incident highlighted the children's ability to share and support each other, contrasting sharply with the adults' conflicts and misunderstandings. My nephew had a preference for the book my daughter read first, and graciously, she allowed him to choose it. When I shared this story, my sister-in-law wrongfully accused me of composing the award-winning reflection for my daughter, perhaps recalling that. I enjoyed writing novels during my college days, a fact she likely learned from my husband. Unbeknownst to me, she was also maliciously spreading rumors at the school, insinuating that I had used personal connections with the competition judges to unfairly advantage my daughter's submission. The spread of these baseless accusations deeply saddened my daughter to the extent that she lost interest in her once beloved pastime of reading. This was the final straw for me. I couldn't bear to see her so disheartened, not only because of the false allegations directed at me, but also because she became a victim of cruel gossip. Before taking any action, I confided in my husband, detailing for the first time the extent of his sister's unkindness towards me since our marriage. This included her taking clothes intended for our daughter, rationalizing that infants couldn't discern gender-specific attire, and making derogatory remarks about my appearance during pregnancy, comparing me to a sumo wrestler. Outraged by his sister's behavior, my husband agreed it was time to involve his parents, insisting on personally conveying the situation. Together with his parents, he confronted my sister-in-law at her home. Her initial delight at seeing her family unexpectedly dissolved into shock as she faced a stern reprimand from my husband. Her reaction to being called out was to direct her anger towards me, accusing me of betraying her to her favorite brother, thereby casting herself as the victim in an attempt to deflect responsibility. Initially, I answered her phone calls, mistaking them for attempts at reconciliation, only to realize she was merely venting her frustrations. Eventually, I set her number to go directly to voicemail, effectively ignoring her attempts to contact me. The call ceased after a few weeks, which I initially attributed to her losing interest. However, I later learned that wasn't the reason. In December, a children's Christmas party was organized at my in-laws, a first for them, which piqued my curiosity about the timing. Nevertheless, my daughter was thrilled to be invited, reminiscing about the joyous Christmas celebration she experienced in kindergarten and hoping for a similar event at her elementary school. Unfortunately, her school didn't organize such festivities due to their policy on religious events. I often ponder the need for strict adherence to religious traditions when Christmas itself has blossomed into a universally cherished holiday distinct in its celebration across the globe. This thought crosses my mind, especially since I've noticed some parents are quite particular about maintaining their religious connotations. Last year, deciding to embrace the festive spirit in our own way, my daughter and I chose to celebrate Christmas quietly at home. She particularly enjoyed the gift exchange, a highlight of our celebration. This year, an invitation from my in-laws suggested a modest budget of $11 for a gift exchange at their Christmas party. My daughter and I embarked on a little adventure to a vast shopping mall nearby, searching for the perfect present. She eventually settled on one of her cherished picture books, eager to share its story, and the joy it brought her with someone else during the party. On the day of the event, with the present in hand, she set off to my in-laws' place, just a short bus ride away from our home. After letting my mother-in-law know of her impending arrival, she kindly offered to pick her up from the bus stop. A call from her later assured me of my daughter's safe arrival, allowing me to momentarily put my worries to rest. However, peace was short-lived. Merely 50 minutes later, the unexpected sound of the front door opening on a weekday caught me off guard. My husband was at work, and I was home working remotely during my daughter's winter break. The sight that greeted me was heart-wrenching, my daughter sitting by the entrance in tears. She handed me a gift-wrapped bag, her expression suggesting that the contents would explain everything inside. I found a newspaper with her reading reflection torn to pieces, accompanied by a menacing card written in red ink. It warned us about becoming too arrogant or else risk ending up like the mutilated stuffed animal, also inside the bag, disfigured and stained with red ink to mimic blood. This disturbing display was far from a harmless prank. My daughter revealed that this unsettling gift was the work of my sister-in-law, a revelation that stunned me. The party was intended to be a joyous, child-centric event, with an agreement among the adults to abstain from preparing gifts personally. Yet despite not accompanying my daughter to the party, I was taken aback to learn of my sister-in-law's presence and her heinous act towards my daughter. Had my mother-in-law been aware of her daughter's attendance, she surely would have informed me, as she had always insisted that we notify her of any issues caused by her daughter. This breach of understanding left me dismayed, underscoring a deliberate attempt to harm us, unbeknownst to my mother-in-law, after my daughter came home upset. I reminded her to tell her grandmother about what happened. However, before she could, my aunt intervened, stating she hadn't called for her, and that only children linked to missionary schools were welcome. My daughter, puzzled, asked what a missionary school was, leaving me struggling for words. Recently, a relative had been accepted into a missionary school, sparking much discussion within the family. My sister-in-law's son attended a missionary kindergarten, and we'd heard tales of relatives, unaware they were connected to such schools until enrollment. Our choice was different. We opted for a local kindergarten and public elementary school for our daughter. It seemed my sister-in-law used this as another opportunity to belittle my daughter, distressed by the threatening gift she received. I rushed to the police station, insisting on the seriousness of the threat. Despite initial reluctance from the police to intervene, suggesting it be resolved as a family matter, thankfully a female officer recognized the gravity of the situation. She acknowledged that threats and violence within families are indeed reportable offenses. She empathized with our fear and took immediate action by promising to visit my sister-in-law with a warning that evening. When my husband came home, I recounted the day's events. Outraged, he condemned his sister's spiteful actions and contacted his parents, who were hosting the Christmas party. Yet they claimed ignorance of the incident. They speculated my sister-in-law might have sneaked in through an unlocked back door while my mother-in-law was preoccupied with other responsibilities. The party was left in the hands of the younger family members. Following the police officer's stern warning to my sister-in-law about the consequences of her actions, my in-laws, disturbed by the possibility of criminal behavior, arranged a family meeting to discuss the matter. At the meeting held at my in-laws' house, my sister-in-law and her husband arrived late. She was visibly displeased and unrepentant about the police involvement, while her husband appeared uninformed about the meeting's purpose. This situation underscored the seriousness of the issue, prompting a collective family discussion on how to move forward and address the underlying tensions. When my sister-in-law's husband was finally made aware of his wife's actions towards our family, his shock was palpable. He had been completely oblivious to the extent of the situation until then. Offering his apologies to us, he seemed genuinely remorseful, a stark contrast to my sister-in-law, who remained defiant and unapologetic. Her rationale that the lack of arrest by the police equated to innocence left everyone speechless, showcasing a level of denial that was hard for us to comprehend. In a surprising turn of events, he announced his decision to divorce her. This revelation stunned us all, as there were no outward signs of trouble in their marriage. Explaining his decision, he shared a history of enduring her behavior, which had escalated from neglecting household duties and childcare to causing fear due to her carelessness. Her obsession with appearances led to multiple unnecessary moves, each driven by her vanity and the desire to maintain a certain social status rather than actual job requirements. Their moves were often justified by her ambitions for their son, like attempting to enroll him in prestigious kindergartens, which only ended in disappointment and further embarrassment. Eventually, they settled for a public elementary school, a choice driven by their son's preference, supported by his father against his wife's initial reluctance. The husband's decision to divorce was not sudden, but a culmination of years of frustration, now expedited by her recent harassment. Caught off guard by the divorce announcement, my sister-in-law attempted a feeble apology, seemingly in a last-ditch effort to reverse the situation. Claiming her actions were merely jokes or pranks, however, the seriousness of her actions, especially the hostile message intended for a child, went far beyond what could be dismissed as a joke. Such behavior, which could instill fear even in adults, was indefensible and highlighted the irreparable breach of trust within the family. I confronted her, highlighting the gap between her actions and the instincts of a nurturing parent. Just because you're a parent doesn't automatically instill you with parental instincts. I pointed out, suggesting that her behavior was far from what one would expect from someone in that role. My husband, witnessing her tears, firmly told her that crying was not a solution to the problem, especially at her age. She should not expect sympathy to absolve her of her actions. Yet she continued to cry, denying any wrongdoing and questioning why she was being singled out for blame. She even suggested that the family's disapproval stemmed from my marriage to her brother, implying that the issue was with me being older rather than her actions. Her lack of insight into the gravity of her behavior left us all speechless, and my husband was particularly taken aback by her inability to grasp the situation. With the atmosphere heavy with unresolved tension, the discussion came to an abrupt halt, and her husband had no choice but to escort her home. Their divorce proceedings later unfolded, marred by her resistance to acknowledging her faults. It was only her son's innocent revelation about the Christmas party that tipped the scales, leading to her reluctant agreement to the divorce. Her son, without any ill intent, recounted to his classmates the unsettling gift exchange he witnessed, specifically the disturbing image of a stuffed animal mangled and stained with red, resembling blood. This confession quickly spread among the school community, stirring concern among teachers and parents alike. Following this revelation, my daughter found it difficult to return to school, her spirit dampened by the incident and the ensuing gossip linking her to her cousin's story. The connection between her absence and the events of the Christmas party became a topic of speculation, underscoring the impact of one thoughtless act on the lives of those involved. I had hoped the whole ordeal could have been quietly resolved, allowing my daughter to return to school. When she felt ready, her cousin's intention in sharing the distressing experience was not for amusement, but as a desperate plea to halt his mother's harmful actions. Witnessing the impact of these revelations, her husband was compelled to expedite the divorce proceedings, accepting her terms just to finalize their separation. By then, she had become widely known in the community for her menacing behavior towards children, leading to her being ostracized and even faced with hostility from neighbors. Feeling trapped and vilified, she saw the divorce as an escape, imagining a return to her parental home would provide solace. However, her estranged husband remained firm on retaining custody of their son, a decision she accepted without much fight, coldly declaring her indifference towards her son as she planned to remarry, stating children were an inconvenience to her plans. Her cruel words were met with her son's brave rejection. He expressed no need for her in his life, finding solace in his father's care and warning her against approaching his cousin. Her situation worsened upon returning to her parents' home, where she was denied entry, leaving her to face the consequences of her actions alone. Her downward spiral led her into precarious situations for basic needs, accumulating debt from unsavory sources, and eventually she vanished from our lives. My husband and his parents chose not to pursue a missing persons report, accepting her absence as a resolution. In the aftermath, my daughter regained the confidence to attend school, where her cousin continues to be a supportive presence, promising to look out for her. This challenging period has unexpectedly strengthened the bond between our families, particularly with my former brother-in-law, as we unite in support of the children. My in-laws have embraced both grandchildren wholeheartedly, stepping in to provide care and support in the absence of my sister-in-law. With her out of the picture, our family has found peace and developed a strong, trusting relationship free from previous tensions.